want to share what I have found out in order to help anybody who is travelling from outside of America to go do a through hike such as the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail. I want to share my experiences and also any hints and tips that I've managed to glean along the way that you can't necessarily find out on the internet, or just clarify a few things that don't seem so clear. Obviously, please check all the current advice because things can change, as we all know, and also just check your own country's rules and regulations as well. What I'm going to be doing in this video is going through the whole visa process, including the interview, gear, permits, flights, insurance, money, mobile phone, equipment, logistics, and also a little bit on resupply. I will put timestamps in the video description box for you, so if you want to skip ahead to any particular section, feel free to do so. Right, let's get started. First things first, you need to get a visa. So anybody wanting to do a through hike needs to get a US visa to be able to enter the country and stay for longer than 3 months. Now, the first bit of advice I can share with you is don't do anything before you have this visa. So don't book your flights, don't get equipment, don't start looking at getting your permits, and more importantly, don't get your hopes up because everything unfortunately does rely on getting this visa first. Now, I have made a lot of notes about the process in which I went through to get my visa, and I didn't know quite what to share with you, so I just thought I'm going to share it all. So I will be referring to my notes as I go through because I don't want to miss out any steps, and I've also kind of made some notes about information and advice that might help you along the way as well, so I hope it's useful. So generally, through hikers need to get a B2 multiple entry visa, and this is from your local embassy, the US Embassy. Now, the Pacific Crest Trail, the average time it takes to hike this is between 5 and 6 months. The Appalachian Trail, I think, is between 5 and 7, and the CDT is about 6 months. So your ordinary 3-month visa is not enough. You do need to apply for one that allows you 180 days in the country. Now, you also have to factor in the fact that you want to get to America a little time before your start date on the hike because you need to get yourself organised. You don't have the luxury of sorting everything out and then just heading straight to the trail. You have to do some things that when you get into America first as well, such as sorting out resupply, adjusting to jet lag, sorting out your phone, any other things like that, and also organising transportation and also relaxing a little bit before you start your hike. So that can take maybe about a week in some cases. Now, there is some steps that you have to follow on the US website, and I will put the link down below for you, and I'll go through those now. One important thing to know that a lot of people don't seem to be talking about is the fact that that visa, once you have had it approved, is valid for 10 years, which means that you can get it in advance. You don't have to wait a couple of months before you leave. It's valid from the day that you step in front of that border control and walk into America. That's when your 6 months starts. And you have 10 years in which to do that. So go ahead and get it in advance. That's absolutely no problem at all. What they do recommend is usually 3 months as a minimum before you intend to travel. So what you now do is go on to the US Department of State website and complete the non-immigrant visa application form, the DS-160, which is also known as the B2 visa. Now, this asks you your personal details, so you should know all those, but also your parents' details as well. But there is one tricky question on there, especially for internationals, and that is your US address when you're staying there. So it will ask you where you're staying, which is a tricky one when you're through hiking. So if you know anybody in America, put their address down if they're happy for you to do so. But if you don't know anybody, what you can do is contact, say, a trail angel that covers that particular trail and ask them if it's okay to use their address. Always make sure you ask permission first, and usually they are more than happy to do it because they do it for everybody. So it's like a known thing. Now, what you then have to do when you've completed the application form is upload a photograph. So you need to have that ready before you complete your application form online. So get that done first. There is a description about what you need to do for your photograph, what size it needs to be and how it needs to look. So check all that out before you start the application process. And then what you do is you upload it to the site as you're going through it. Once you've completed that, you then set up portal details. And it's pretty straightforward. You just kind of set up a username, they give you a passcode, And then you have to pay a non-refundable processing fee. The time in which I did it, it was 160 US dollars, which I think worked out about 130 pounds. But you don't get that back. You have to pay that in advance before you can then go on to the next step, which is booking an interview. You can check on the website the waiting time, so it will give you an idea of how long it will take until you can get an interview, and also how long the processing takes afterwards. So that information is readily available for you to help you plan in advance. I went and got an interview, I think I applied on the 17th of September and I got my interview on the 1st of October, and there were ones that were sooner than that, so it didn't take that long at all. The only problem for me was that they had no slots after the hour of 9:30 in the morning, so they were all very early slots, and the interview I had to go to was down in London, which is a good few hundred miles away for me, so it meant that I had to arrange transportation to get down to London and stay in a hotel the night before, so it's quite an outlay up front financially, but it has to be done. You have to attend an interview in person. There is just no way around it. It's just one of those things. What you also do is find out how you're going to get your passport and your visa back to you, because what they don't do is send it to your home address. With me, they sent it by courier to a DX number, and I had to then go along and pick it up with identification. So don't be surprised if they don't send it to your home address. I read some applications can take quite a long time. I think they average about 3 months, that's what they recommend. My whole process was over and done with in a few weeks, so it was really fast. But there is something that I found out, and that's if you've been found ineligible to receive a visa and you need to request a waiver during the interview process, you can expect it to take at least 6 months from that date and up to 8 months. So that's something to be wary of if you are in that situation. Now, what you then have to do once you've got your interview date is prepare for it. So you need to get all the documentation ready for that interview. And they clearly state on the website what you need to take with you. So you need to have your passport. That passport, by the way, has to have a minimum of 6 months from the last date in which you will be in America. So if it's going to take you 6 months to hike, you need that passport to be valid for at least a year. So that's something to bear in mind before you even start this process. Make sure you've got more than a year on your passport. You also have to take with you the non-immigrant visa application form, so the DS-160. You have to print that out and take it with you. You have to take your appointment instructions page, the application fee payment receipt, and also a photograph. Now this was something that wasn't very clear for me because I uploaded the photograph to the website, but it did tell me to still take a photograph with me, and I think it was 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. They didn't ask for it when I was there, I didn't need it, but it did state that I had to take it, so I'd recommend just taking one anyway, just in case they need it for any reason. Now, there is extra preparation you have to do for your interview for it to be successful and for you to feel confident that you're going to get through it, because you can't just rely on the fact that you take the bare minimum and everything will be okay. I will go through extra things that you need to take with you, but what I want to do is go through what they asked me and how the interview process went, so you can understand what you need to take as addition to those basic requirements. Now, you have to know your facts. You need to know about the trail, your start point, your end point. You can't just go to your interview and just say you're hiking and expect them to just give you a visa. You need to have a lot more information to be able to provide to them if they ask. The interview process itself. First things first, you have to get there early because you have to queue up and go through security. It felt a little bit like being at an airport. You can't just turn up and expect to be there a couple of minutes beforehand. There was a queue outside mine and it took about 20 to 25 minutes to get in. So you are going through security measures. Also, note you can't take a bag into the building usually with you either. Now, the interview itself was really strange because I was expecting it to be in a room with a person and everything to be nice and kind of cozy, but it's not like that at all. I arrived and the first thing that happened was I went to a window to kind of register to say that I was there. They asked me a few basic questions about what I was doing and where I was going and why I needed the visa. They also then took fingerprints off me. So it was an ink-free digital fingerprint scan that you have to do. So that's usually the first stage. I then got told to sit down and wait, and I was called over then for my official interview, which was at a kiosk. So it had like the perspex glass. It had me standing there with all the room behind me, hearing the whole conversation, talking to somebody, you know, like when you're getting train tickets or something like that. It was just like that. So don't expect it to be a room that you're going into. And I was asked lots of different questions and provided the documentation and the forms in which I had to take with me. So the questions that they asked me were all a little bit random, but then all relevant. And when you go there, it's very helpful to understand what they're wanting to know from you. And what I gleaned from it is all they want to know is that you're going there for tourism and that you will not overstay your allowance. That's all that really they're making sure of, and that you're a safe person and you're not a criminal. So you can't just turn up saying that you're hiking a trail and that's it, because you need to sound credible. So if, for example, you're hiking the PCT, don't just say, I'm hiking the PCT. You need to explain to them that you're hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a long distance through hike. You're camping, you're walking it from start to finish. You need to know your start point and your end point, because they did ask me that. And also explain the states in which you're hiking through, such as Southern California, the desert, you're going through the Sierra, you're then going to go through Oregon, Washington, or, you know, all those kind of things. So make sure you know your stuff. Also, another thing to prepare for is they're going to ask you why you need 6 months to do it. So remember that they might not have heard of a through hike, they might not have heard the Pacific Crest Trail, the AT or the CDT. So before you go, prepare something that shows why you need 6 months. And what I did was I went through a bit of a plan with how long I thought it would take me based on how many miles I would walk each day, and take that with you to show them if they ask for it. Also, they will ask you, let's have a look. So the questions that they asked me, why do I need 6 months? They asked me if I had any relatives in the US and have I been before? They asked me what I will do at the end of the trip, because I think what they wanted to know was that I was going to be going back home. So I made it clear that I was going back home, I would be working when I got home, and I have commitments, things like that. They asked me who was paying for the trip. Was it me that was being able to afford it? Did anybody give me money for it? So the reason why they ask this is they want to know that you have the funds to be able to support yourself while you're out there, and that you're not going to be looking for work. So something really important to take with you is a bank statement, just to prove that you have the funds to cover yourself while you're there. If somebody's giving you the money, get it in your account before you go to your interview so you've got it in there as evidence. They also asked me if I had a plane ticket, which I explained no, because I've not got my visa, I've not got my permit, and that's something that I'll be getting later, and they were quite happy with that. They also asked me what I will do when I return home. What I do for work is a job being held open for me, so take any employment documentation you have. So if somebody is holding a job for you, take a letter to confirm that that's what's going to be happening. Or just be very honest and explain that you've left your job or you're not working at the moment, but when you get home, this is what your plans are or your intentions are. So just be honest about it. They then, so another thing is a bit of advice to take is things, for example, that bond you to the country in which you're from, whether it's a rental agreement, a mortgage statement, anything like that. Take any evidence with you that you can to prove that you will be going home again. And then what surprised me is that within about a minute, she then turned around and said, okay, you've been approved. And that was it. You're told there and then as you stood at the window if it's been approved or not. And bear in mind that if you are approved, they take your passport and don't give you it back. So I stood there looking a bit stupid thinking, where's my passport? But they hold on to it, because what they then do is they do all the processing, they sort your visa out, they pop it in your passport for you and then post it back to you. That usually takes about a week. I think it said about 5 days for the processing and the administration side of it, and then a few days for the delivery of it. And then what happened next? And that was pretty much it. I found the whole experience very easy, very straightforward, but definitely take as much documentation and evidence as you can before you go. Let's talk about what happens if you run out of time and need longer than 6 months. You have, from what I see, 2 options. You can apply for your visa to be extended. So whilst you're in America hiking, you can go through the process of filling all the forms in, requesting this visa extension and applying whilst you're there. However, it's very expensive, it can be quite a lengthy process, and again, it's not guaranteed. So you probably won't know where you stand if you're out hiking. The other option is to leave America and re-enter, because at the end of the day, you have got a multiple entry visa. You are able to go in and out of America over that 10-year period as long as you don't exceed 6 months. Now, I'd heard people say that you can't do this on a Thru-Hike because you're leaving but not spending enough time out of America before you return. But I've also heard people say that you can do it and it's guaranteed. Now, my advice is do not bank on it. It is a grey area. I called up customs and double checked, and they said it comes down to the immigration officer that you deal with at the airport. So there is no black and white rule on this, so just proceed with caution. Personally, I found the experience very positive. I had absolutely no problems at all. I walked through Manning Park into Canada. I then went to Vancouver Airport and got a flight back into Northern California within the space of 48 hours, and they had no problems at all with me doing so. They did ask why. They'd asked me why I was doing it so soon, and my answer was, well, I was doing a Thru-Hike, I was running low on time, and I wanted to go to this section and then go back. And he had absolutely no problem with it, and he stamped me an extra 6 months and wished me all the luck in the world, and it was great. But it's just not something you can rely on. But my theory is that I think I'd been hiking about 4.5 months at that point. So I thought, in worst case scenario, if I've only got a month and a half left, I just walk really fast. And that was fine by me. But just remember, it's not guaranteed, but it is an option for you. Getting gear is also another problem that might not be easy if you don't live in America. There is a lot of recommendation for certain packs, certain tents, certain quilts or sleeping bags, but some of those brands are just not available in other countries apart from America. And if you've got your eye set on something, you can order it from the US and get it shipped to your own country. However, not only do you have high shipping costs, but you can also be responsible for customs charges as well as extra taxes. So that piece of equipment can end up being very expensive. Now, you can wait until you get out there and buy your equipment, but if, like me, you wanted your equipment before you went out so you could try it out fully, there is another way. There is usually companies within your own country that can order this kind of stuff for you and you buy it from them. Even though it is more expensive to buy that particular item, at least I knew what I was getting. It wasn't going to be surprised with extra charges or costs, and they also offered free delivery for me. And I would rather have done that than waited till I got to America and then have the hassle of sorting everything out and then maybe finding out that it wasn't suitable for me. Now, there were other things that I wanted, but I just couldn't get, such as certain packs. It was just too expensive, and also a certain tent that I wanted that I just thought it is just not worth the extra money. But there are options out there. You just have to be aware that you may be incurring a lot more taxes and a lot more customs charges. Another thing on that is that if you are out there, and a lot of people tend to send home things like their ice axe, their bear canister and equipment that they don't need anymore. I only did this once, and I sent a pair of trousers, my micro spikes and a couple of other little bits and bobs back home. So I paid the postage, and what I did not expect was, because I'd purchased the items and used the items, some of which were already from the UK, there was a customs charge that had to be paid when my items returned back to the UK as well. And that was not expected, so just bearing that in mind if you're sending anything home. Luckily, I didn't send my ice axe or my bear canister home. I actually gave my bear canister to a guy that gave me a hitch because I thought it was so kind of him to pick me up, and he was saying about wanting to hike it one day. So I thought, here you go, have my bear canister. And my ice axe I actually gave to a trail angel, so she could either sell it on to another hiker to get some money, because she gave me a lift and didn't accept any money from me. So that's just some alternatives that you can do with your gear if you don't want to keep hold of them. I'm not going to go through the whole permit system, but for me, I had to get a permit for the PCT, I had to get a Canada permit, and also a fire permit for California. So with regards to my permit for the PCT, the process wasn't too bad for me. I did it obviously in 2018. So I applied on the 14th of November. I got an email back saying it had been approved and accepted on the 26th of November, which was really fast. It usually gets reviewed early November, so you usually find out mid-November. However, you can't print it off until January, so that's just when they issue the permits. The thing that it did say is that you can check on your permit in the permit management portal whenever you like, and if it's been approved, they quote that you can feel certain that your permit will be issued. So even though it's not available till January, you can feel certain that once it's been approved, you can go ahead and sort out your flights and everything, as long as you've got your visa. Now, the other permit that I needed to get was the Canada entry permit, and you need this if you're deciding to walk through Manning Park into Canada and then return home from there. Now, you have to apply for this permit at least 8 to 10 weeks before the start of your hike. No further in advance than 6 months. That's just something to bear in mind. And it also can take up to about 8 weeks to get that approved. And once it is, all they do is they email you back with it and you print it off, and you have to carry it with you. The other permit I recommend you getting is your California fire permit. Now, you need to carry this with you in California to show that you understand about how fires work and that you are responsible. You can get them from any of the California US Forest Service sites. However, I just think it's easier to just print it out before you go and you've got everything that you need in one place. So all you do is you go online, it's completely free, you answer a simple quiz and then you print it out at the end and just carry it with you. It's very simple. Now, the other thing is when you're going through Oregon and Washington, there's no specific permits that you have to have in advance, but what you do have to do is just fill them out at certain sites as you're going through certain parks. And what you do is you normally just attach it onto your bag, and that just lets people monitor what's happening and who's going through. Now, you don't need a permit for Mount Whitney. If you have a PCT permit, then that is valid. So you can go to Mount Whitney and hike that and come back. There's just restrictions on where you can camp, so you just need to be aware of that. And that's pretty much it for the permit side of things. Flights. Now, once you've got your PCT permit and your visa, you can go ahead and book flights. And this, I think, is the most exciting part because that's kind of everything done then and you know that you're on your way. Now, there is a lot of people out there saying you have to have a return flight. That is not the case. You do not have to have a return flight. I know that because I didn't have one. I decided to just book a one-way flight because I had a 6-month visa, multiple entry visa, and I knew that I didn't want to be tied down to a specific date of which I had to return. And I didn't want to book a return flight and then have to pay the extra administration fees for that. So I decided to just get a one-way ticket, and if you're ever questioned when you get to the border, you can explain that you're doing a Thru-Hike, you've got your permit, you've got your visa, and I think they pretty much understand that. It's not a problem. However, if you feel that you need that reassurance of having a return flight, if you're worried about anything at border control, then get a return flight, because all you have to do then is usually contact the airlines, pay an administration fee to be able to change it. Just make sure that you get a flight that is changeable and that you're not fixed to it, because that could end up very costly. Insurance is required on a Thru-Hike, especially if you are not from the country in which you're hiking, because you don't have the medical plans that the most of the people that were living there have already. But not only that, you're going to need additional cover to your normal day-to-day travel insurance. So you have to make sure that your travel insurance will cover you for the altitude in which you're hiking. So for example, on the PCT, you can hike up to about 14,000 feet, and generally most insurance companies will not cover you for hiking at that altitude. So just make sure that you find one that does cover you. Also, if you're intending on wearing micro spikes, crampons and using an ice axe, which you probably will be doing if you're going over the Sierra section, then you have to make sure that your cover covers you for that, because some of them, which I found, do not cover you if you're wearing crampons or if you're having to use an ice axe, because it's classed as extreme. So make sure that you've got that covered as well. Managing money was pretty straightforward out in America. I used my credit card, my debit card and cash. Now, when I got there, my cards worked fine straight away, because what I'd done is notify my bank that I was heading to America on a particular date, and that just opened it up that they were used instantly. You do normally have to tell your bank when you're traveling that you're going to be in a certain country for a certain period of time to make sure that your cards aren't declined when you get there. But just bear in mind, for example, with my bank, I was only able to say I was there for 3 months. The latest date was like a 3-month point. So when I was out there, I had to then renew it again for another 3 months to let them know that it was still me, I was still there, and it wasn't a fraudulent activity. What I also did was just draw out cash when I got to some towns, so I always had money on me for small items to purchase, also to give donations to trail angels and tips. So I just carried a small amount of cash on me. I believe there's also a card a few people that I saw using called a revolt card, but I think it's a general thing. There is other cards available, and what it is, it's a prepaid card that you pay money into and you can use it in many different countries. Using your phone abroad. Now, the first thing you need to do is make sure that your mobile phone is unlocked, so it's not tied into a particular SIM. What you can do when you're in America is then go along to a company and get a SIM-only card and use it in your phone. Another thing to bear in mind, which I saw a few people have a problem with, was their model of phone was not compatible with that particular SIM or that particular company. So if you want to just double check in advance, then I would recommend doing that, because otherwise you might be tied to a particular company and you might not want that. But otherwise, I got a SIM card from AT&T. The two most popular ones on the PCT is AT&T and Horizon, I found, and I think they worked equally as well as each other. They allow you to get a SIM card. You can have it as just phone calls, you can have it as data, you can choose different plans, but don't worry, you're not going to be tied in for 12 months, because what they do is they put you on kind of like a rolling month contract, and they understand that there's people out there just traveling. So it's not like at home when you're signing up for a year or 2 years on a contract. It's just like a rolling plan. You do pay a little bit more for the privilege of it, but then you can cancel it at any time. You can buy equipment when you're out there. You don't have to pre-plan everything. And what I mean by that is your bulky items. So your bear canister, ice axe, micro spikes. What I did was I got my bear canister and my ice axe from Kennedy Meadows itself, and I found they had such a range and they had so many options. It's not a problem at all. So don't worry and stress about getting everything shipped to certain places or having to get it the day that you arrive in America and then send it on to yourself. You can just buy it when you get to Kennedy Meadows. One thing I did do was I did get my micro spikes when I arrived in San Diego at the beginning, and I just put it in one of my resupply boxes. I just thought that was an easier option for me. With regards to trainers or shoes or hiking boots, whatever you do, do not buy 4 or 5 pairs of shoes or boots at the start of your trip, because your feet may change size. A lot of people went up a few sizes. I didn't, I stayed the same. But you'll find that you might have different needs, or your trainers or shoes or trail runners, whatever you decide to use, won't work for you. But it is pretty easy to get stuff out there. At Kennedy Meadows, for example, they have people there that sell all different types of the popular shoes. You can get into towns pretty easy. You can always get REI, for example, to send you them to places that you're going to be on trail. And they did that for me as well on a couple of occasions. So just get your trail shoes or your runners or your boots when you're out there. And it is just quite straightforward. So don't stress about things like that. It's all very easy. A bit of advice is to get to America at least 3 or 4 days before the start of your hike. You want to recover from your jet lag. You don't want to start the trail absolutely shattered. And also you want to acclimatise, because wherever you're coming from, the weather will be completely different, no doubt. You also want to be able to sort out all your food. So not only for that week ahead of hiking, but you might want to sort it out for the whole month. So you might need to do a huge shop and then go to the post office and send yourself packages, which is what I did. I think I sent myself 3 or 4 boxes at the very beginning, and plus I had then had my food for that first week as well. So that can be quite stressful in itself. You're literally being thrown into a new country. You go into supermarkets with all this different food that you're not used to and different ways and customs. You're having to then throw it all in your hotel room or wherever you are, box it all up and then send it off to post offices. So everything's quite new and stressful. So allow yourself a few days for that, because it is quite hard work. You've then got to sort out your mobile phone, so get your SIM cards. That can take a couple of hours out your way. And also you want to just relax a little bit, phone home, phone your loved ones before you leave, and just have that feeling of calmness before the trail. Also, you're going to be wanting to sort out your transportation to the trail itself. So specifically for the Pacific Crest Trail, You can normally get hold of trail angels who are happy to either host you or give you a ride to the trail. But if not, or if you want to do it on your own, you can get a bus from downtown San Diego. They go 4 times a week. They cost about $10, Monday to Friday, not weekends. And they drop you less than 2 miles from the southern terminal. So that is an option as well. So you've got quite a few things to sort out, so just go easy on yourself. The final thing to talk about is Resupply. Now, I have done a whole separate video on this because it's quite detailed, and I will put the link up here for you and in the description box below, so check that out if you want a lot more detail. But you will probably want to be doing your first resupply as soon as you arrive in the country because you can't take food with you, you can't take fruit and vegetables and things like that. So the first thing you'll need to do when you get there is get your food ready for that first week in advance. You might then want to consider getting it for the whole month in advance and sending yourself boxes to different places. But what you want to do is not think too far ahead because it can become quite stressful. You haven't got the advantages of people that already live in America, where you've got somebody sending you parcels every few weeks and you've got somebody looking out for you. You are very self-reliant and have to do it yourself. What I did, which I think worked perfectly, was when I got to bigger towns, I would then buy extra food and send it to myself where I knew that I was going to run into some problems. Now, you can probably get throughout the whole trail without having to send yourself a single box. It can be done. You won't be eating the best, but it can be done if you haven't got any dietary restrictions. But if you want extra choices, a healthier diet, or if you've got specific dietary restrictions, it is worth sending yourself some boxes to some places, which I mentioned in that video. So it will be easy, trust me. Once you've done one, it becomes so easy when you're out there. And just do it as you go. Don't think more than, say, 4 weeks in ahead of time anywhere, because normally a post office will only hold your stuff for you for a month anyway. So just do it as you go and just chill out about it. Trust me, it's a lot easier than you think it is. Now, I hope that helps. I've gone through an awful lot of things today, and I know it's been quite a talky video, but if I haven't made anything clear or if I can help in any other way, I will. So just ask me down below and I'll see what I can do to help out. But otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.